All right, you guys, we're going to be going over chapters 10 and 11 as well as 12 and 13. There really isn't a whole lot to um, really add to what you have already learned because once you get to the personal level or get through the personal level and the basic levels of an organization, you should be familiar with the types of skills and tools that you will need to be a good leader. So chapter 11, 10, chapters 10 and 11 both go over the community level, and then 12 and 13 are at the global level. And I'll go over your portfolio project at the end of this. So, leadership at the community level is vital for creating resilient and thriving communities. Effective leaders build strong relationships. They engage in diverse diverse stakeholders and guide the community through both stable and crisis times. And we'll cover that. So community building is about fostering a strong relationship, a sense of belonging, and shared goals among individuals in a given area. It creates a culture of cooperation, laying the groundwork for resilience. And the key components to community building are social cohesion, shared visions, and resource sharing. So, social cohesion strengthen trust and bonds. Shared visions align the community's goals for the future. And resource sharing ensures equitable distribution of resources. Community relationships and stakeholders. Having strong relationships are the backbone of effective leadership. Leaders must engage a wide range of people across all ages and all social groups and all cultures. And this is why I don't mind putting the community level with the global level because we have so many different people from around the globe that have come to America. So knowing different types of cultures and how they interact socially is important. I would also say that within the community and within the at the global level, you need to do some research on marketing as well because um, even for something as simple as an over-the-counter medication, for example, like NyQuil, if they use a dark color and dark sort of advertising for NyQuil at night, not Dayquil, NyQuil. Um, if they use a dark color, their sales will dwindle or not have any at all because dark colors in other parts of the world are associated with death. So, not going to have very many sales with people running to the store trying to buy a dark blue or a dark green NyQuil because just culturally and socially that they don't see things the way we do. So it's important to take into consideration the different social groups and cultures at the community level as well. The community stakeholders are residents who are impacted by policies and decision. You have your local governments, they provide policy guidance and support. And then businesses, they offer economic resources and opportunities. And nonprofits and schools serve as vital support networks. And engaging these groups ensure the success of community initiatives and creates a more connected, cooperative environment. I will say that at my school that I work at, um, we actually have on-campus medical clinics. We have, um, I think it's AR Connections, uh, an AR Connections medical clinic. And then we also have different types of psychologists on campus as well for behavior and other things, mental health issues. So, and that's open to everybody. If a child over in kindergarten is sick, They can make an appointment, take the kid over to the medical clinic on campus, and then a doctor is actually there to prescribe medication if it's needed. So I think that that is a really good thing because not everybody can afford to just take a day off of work and take their kid to the doctor. So schools are vital in the community. And then community leaders can be formal or informal figures who guide the community towards positive change. The effective leaders have vision, empathy, problem-solving skills, and integrity. And I hope that by doing the little leadership quiz, there are a lot of them out there that you can try. But hopefully you know where you are within this leadership um, level or community level leadership and what kind of strengths you have and maybe where your weaknesses are. I always find it interesting that sometimes they're really spot on and sometimes you're kind of like, oh, I guess I can see that. But if you ever want to do another one, there are corporations that will pay um, leadership or management building companies to do really in-depth quizzes and they're usually very right because they've had a lot of psychological research put into their quizzes. The leadership wheel outlines key leadership dimensions like vision, communication, inclusion, collaboration, and accountability. And applying this model helps community leaders identify areas to improve and build more sustainable and inclusive leadership approaches. And in diverse communities, leaders must be culturally competent, understanding different values and communication styles. Ensuring equity and inclusion helps avoid misunderstandings and creates a sense of belonging for everyone. Then you have the assets planning model. Rather than focusing on problems, the asset planning model leverages a community's existing strengths. Leaders identify community assets like skills, resources, and organizations and build on them to drive progress. So you need to be able to identify your assets, build on the resources, and have a collaborative action to engage stakeholders to address the common goals. And then community engagement is essential for ensuring decisions uh, reflect the needs of everyone, have effective strategies to include um, participatory decision making or have everyone participate in the decision making, have inclusive practices, try not to leave anyone out, and ensuring transparency in all communication. Transparency is really big because you can fall into a hole where you don't communicate with one person and that one person's going to feel left out and they're probably not going to contribute as much as they possibly could because of the lack of transparency or lack of communication. So try not to leave anyone out whenever you're trying to engage in communication with the community. So, crisis management is an essential skill for community leaders, and a community in crisis requires swift action, clear communication, and resource coordination. Leaders must also ensure that community members feel supported and involved in response efforts. And there are different types of crises. I think we're all familiar with these. They include natural disasters like earthquakes and floods, like we're having right now. Uh, Tornado weather. We've had a lot of that in Conway and Central Arkansas recently. Not just this week, but um, the past few years. It's been kind of violent when with regards to tornadoes. Then you have public health emergencies like pandemics and disease outbreaks, man-made disasters where there might be an industrial accident or maybe terrorism going on, and then economic crisis, which is financial downturns and unemployment. Um, So leaders must be prepared for these different types of crises with tailored responses to each of those. And that's why we have crisis teams, because they are the best people, or the people who have been put in a position where they can facilitate different help, and they know what the people need. Um, Public health preparedness is a growing concern, particularly after global health crises like COVID-19. It involves surveillance systems for early detection, healthcare capacity for ensuring hospitals are ready for a large group of people coming in, and then community education is providing clear and accurate information and having an emergency plan for response strategies that are in place. And crisis management requires quick, effective action. The key elements for managing a crisis are clear communication again, coordination, everyone needs to know what they're doing, resource allocation, you need to make sure you know where everything is going and try not to oversupply one versus the other in a community, and then provide emotional support. Disaster preparedness model includes risk assessment, preparedness planning, response, recovery, and mitigation. So you need to be able to identify the potential threats, create a response plan to ensure resources are available. I can't talk. And then act swiftly with organizational action and focus on rebuilding and healing others, or healing after a crisis, and mitigation is implementing strategies to reduce future risks. Then you have the community's response is a key to limiting harm during a crisis. So you need rapid testing and diagnoses quickly, identifying those who are affected, healthcare support, ensuring hospitals have the capacity to treat the sick people. And that's been an issue, or that was an issue with COVID-19. There were places that didn't have any beds. I have people who are friends of mine who are doctors, and they talk about how terrible it was. Like someone would come in having a heart attack, and one of the restrictions that was placed on the physicians themselves was if they come in and they test positive for COVID, you can't treat them until after they've tested negative. Well, if you're coming in for a heart attack and you test positive for COVID, more than likely your chances of passing away are higher than someone who comes in and doesn't test positive for COVID. So it was just a terrible situation. They were trying to limit people coming in because they didn't have enough beds or enough to facilitate the community. And then you have community outreach. So you need to keep the public informed, and you need to have vaccination and treatments offered and available. So community leadership requires proactive planning and effective crisis management by fostering strong relationships, engaging stakeholders, and applying leadership models. Leaders can create resilient communities, and in times of crisis, leaders must be prepared to act quickly, communicate clearly, and ensure resources and support are accessible to everyone. And building on assets, ensuring multicultural inclusion, and preparing for public health emergencies are critical aspects of being prepared. Um, so now let's go into the global leadership, and this won't take long. Um, so let me look at my notes. Effective communication is central to leadership success, especially in the global context. Um, we will be looking at the principles of global leadership, but also how communication impacts leadership effectiveness across different cultures and regions. And we'll go over the barriers to effective communication, the communication skills required at different leadership levels, and how to navigate intercultural differences in communication. And we'll touch on concepts like uh, um, expiration, personal identity, and Hofstede's cultural model. So, defining communication itself is the process of transmitting information, ideas, and emotions between individual groups. It involves both verbal and nonverbal channels. So, be very aware of that. When I worked in taxation, I was very tuned into nonverbal cues because it was if when you're talking to people who owe years and years of back taxes and you're trying to get a clear story of why they did what or didn't do why they didn't do what they were supposed to do. It was very important to watch for nonverbal cues because it could tell you if they were trying to lie or not and try to weasel their way out of having to pay, say, $120,000 in taxes. So nonverbal cues are very important, especially facial expression. I kind of feel like I've gotten a little stone-faced, and I got that way whenever I was in taxation because I didn't want anybody to be able to read me as to why I was asking a certain question. But I've kept that, and so a lot of my in-person students say that I have a really bad RBF, and I'm like, well, I'm just looking at you. It's nothing. I'm not trying to be hateful or look at you hatefully. I'm just like that. So, effective communication is not just about conveying a message, it's also about ensuring that the message is understood and intended. Um, so, being a stone-faced RBF type of person, it's really hard. And then I've already told you that I'm not very empathetic either. And I think that just comes from experience. I've heard a lot of different stories, and I'm sorry, but when your fifth grandmother passes away, I'm asking you, how do you have five grandmothers? So, um, that's that. And for global leaders, the ability to communicate clearly and effectively is essential, not just within their own culture, but across cultural boundaries. And this is where challenges can arise, and we must be aware of the barriers to communication in global settings. And I don't know if anybody has had to deal with bilingual or um, had to work with anyone who didn't speak your own language, but you kind of have to have this um, lightheartedness about you whenever you speak to them, because if you give off the wrong impression or come across physically in your nonverbal verbal cues, they might feel a little scared or not sure, and so you kind of want to be able to communicate with them. So language differences, there are different dialects and terminologies that can distort messages and conveyance of them, even within the same language. Regional accents and uh, colloquialisms and can lead to misunderstandings. So if you go down to Mexico, the further you go down or east or west you go, they do have different dialects and they do have different terms. They can figure out what they're talking about, but essentially, but they do have some differences. And cultural norms and values affect how messages are interpreted. For example, direct communication in some cultures may be perceived as rude, in others, where indirect communication is preferred. Um, I will say that if you come across anyone who is from the Middle East, um, or even Hispanic, females are not regarded as anyone who should be putting forth any real effort in communication. For Hispanics, I know that they believe more in women just being home workers and stuff, and making eye contact with them can indicate different things, especially in some places. I think the further south you go, eye contact can actually be flirtation. So you might want to, if you're going to be working with people in those areas or within those cultures or who have those cultural beliefs, you may want to uh, look up their communication, um, the communication skills you'll need. Leaders must also avoid assuming that others think or behave the same way they do. So, stereotyping a group based on cultural or region can lead to miscommunication and poor relationships. And then emotional barriers. Emotions such as frustration or excitement could uh, cloud a message, especially if the recipient feels defensive or not respected. So be careful of that. That's why I say try to stay lighthearted and not don't get overly excited and be like, ooh, but just kind of like try to understand and be like, yes, I under um like motion to them, yes, I understand. Um and then we have technological barriers. So because of today in today's digital world, miscommunication can also stem from technical problems, email misinterpretations, poor video conference quality, or time zone differences. Um, Email misinterpretations are very big. You don't want to use all caps in your email because that's like yelling. Um, Sometimes I do use all caps, but it's not yelling. It's like, I want you to know this is what I'm saying, or focus on this word, or italicize a word. Just be aware. Some people take certain things offensively, and I think the younger a person is, the more offensive they get over that kind of stuff. So effective global leaders must actively work to identify and overcome these barriers to ensure their messages are received accurately and respectfully. So there are communication skills at 6 levels of leadership. The self-leadership um, at the foundational leader or foundational level, leaders must communicate with themselves. And interpersonal leadership, you focus on one-on-one communication. Team leadership, you need to communicate effectively within your teams. And then organizational leadership involves organizational change, management, ensuring alignment across departments, and providing clear messaging during critical periods. So know who you need to communicate with and how to communicate with them. And then you have strategic leaders who must communicate vision and direction to a wider audience, ensuring alignment between the organization's mission and stakeholders. And then you have global leadership. At the global level, communication involves navigating diverse cultures and markets. Um, I'm going to skip over some because a lot of it's very repeated. The Global Communications Continuum is a framework for understanding how communication varies across different contexts and cultures. It highlights how communication is shaped by local, region, and global factors and how it can move between those levels. At one end of the continuum, communication may be highly localized, shaped by deeply ingrained cultural practices. At the other end, communication can be global, um, where standardization becomes important. So, understanding where different cultures and contexts fall on this continuum helps global leaders adjust to their communication strategies. Mm. So the value of this will be the last thing. So the value of Hofstede cultural model, um, it's a tool used to understand cultural differences. And he identified 6 dimensions of culture that influence behavior and communication. And it's power distance, the degree to which less powerful members of a society accept inequality or power distribution. Individualism versus collectivism is the extent to which people value individual achievements versus group goals. Masculinity versus femininity. Uncertainty avoidance is how comfortable a society is with uncertainty and ambiguity. Then you have long-term versus short-term orientation, the focus on future rewards versus immediate results. I think that's kind of where we are right now with our government. We're kind of we see things that are in the future. We know it's going to happen. We know it's probably going to be better, but getting through the short-term frustration is going to be a little daunting. And then you have indulgence versus restraint is the degree to which a society allows gratification of desires versus control. So Hofstede's model helps leaders navigate cultural differences, providing insight into how different cultures approach issues like authority, decision making, and communication. And this knowledge allows leaders to tailor their approach to align with cultural expectations, improving their effectiveness in global contexts. So, overall, the basic concept for both is know how to communicate verbally and non-verbally at the community level and at the global level. Yes, there are some differences. Yes, do your research. If you're ever in a global situation, and make sure you know your community that you're working in. You don't want to um, talk to them as if you know more than they do. You don't want to use language that they don't understand. Make sure you keep it clear and concise. All right, so I'm going to actually do a different video for the um, portfolio assignment because that was my bell. So my lunch is over. Um, so you guys, if you have any questions, just let me know and I will get back with you. You guys have a great day.